The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. With the house that Ruth built and its successor, one of the landmarks of the Bronx, and the legacy of baseball thick and rich in this borough, baseball is as much a part of Bronx life as anything else. And with the ending of the World Series and the baseball season, we thought we'd catch up with maybe the Bronx's foremost baseball expert and review a number of things in a much lighter show than we normally do. We'll have some fun tonight with baseball official scorekeeper and author Howie Carpin. We'll talk about the World Series just completed, about the Mets, the Yankees, the expanded instant replay, which, like it or not, is coming to a stadium near you in 2014. And we'll also talk about his new book, which is this book, Baseball's Best Rookies, along with Russ Cohn. And his other books, too. We can talk about Yankees Essential and Imagine a Mets Perfect Season, which I do every single day. If you want to join in the conversation, talk a little baseball, then call in 718-960-7241. You can also email comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. For now, before the weather turns cold for good, let's talk about the summer game. It's baseball with my man, Howie Carpin. Nice to have you, Howie.
Great to be back at the old haunt.
There we go. So let's start with the World Series. We're going to bring on co-author Russ Cohn for this book in just a moment. What can we learn about what it takes to build a winning team from these two very well-constructed teams, the Cardinals and the Red Sox?
Well, the Red Sox had, a number of signings that clicked, and to have that many signings click in one season is kind of fluky. So a lot of teams are going to try to capture what they did, but they also, people remember when they got rid of all that salary a couple of years ago when they traded Adrian Gonzalez and Carl Crawford to the Dodgers, they already had a core in place of young players ready to step in. But then they made some shrewd signings to build their team. The Cardinals are like the model organization of Major League Baseball. They just seem to come up with guys at left and right, no matter what their drafting position is, no matter, if they're in the 30th pick or the second pick. They're coming up with players. I mean, everyone thought when Albert Pujols left for the Angels, that was the end of the Cardinals. Well, look what happened. I mean, they've gone on to be successful, made the World Series again. I mean, they are a model franchise. Those two teams are stable from top to bottom, and also their minor league systems are strong, not only in personnel, but in instruction.
Let's go two different things. Let's start with the Red Sox side, okay? That moment when they traded they dumped the salary, and everybody said, oh my goodness, the Red Sox, they're rebuilding, which of course in New York is, a word you're not allowed to say. And so, yes, they were fortunate. They signed Victorino and Napoli, and and those things all worked out. But is that a trend, for example, a team like the Yankees or other teams should take a very close look at, because you dump your high salaries and it actually can turn out? To me, that's one of the lessons in there.
I don't think they should fall slave to what that blueprint was, because the Yankees are in a different situation than the Red Sox. The Yankees farm system is barren. I mean, they could tell you they have all these prospects right now, but they don't have prospects. Certainly not everyday players, maybe some pitchers. But they don't have a lot of prospects like the Red Sox had, where they could, build off that. The Yankees basically have to go through an overhaul, whether they deny it or not.
Right.
This team has to go through an overhaul. The Mets are basically in a little bit of limbo, but they're more forward in progress than the Yankees because of the young players.
Well, and also the Red Sox had, for example, Pedroia in place, David Ortiz in place.
Two guys that were hurt last year.
That's right. And the Yankees don't really have those kinds of cogs.
No.
We'll talk more about the Yankees in a moment. Then let's go to the Red Sox. A lot of people don't realize getting rid of Albert Pujols, which of course was a remarkable thing. He's, my goodness, best player in the game at that particular time. But that's what brought them Waka, who ended up being, in essence, speaking of rookies, as good a rookie as you could imagine.
Right. And also, before we start putting these guys in the Hall of Fame, we got to give them a little more leeway, a little more rope to see what they do. The kid was great at the end. But that's just typical of the guys they're coming up with. They not only come up with talented people, they're ready to play when they come up. And that's what I talk about instruction. A lot of teams are lacking in instruction. They're all going to the computers. It's the cheap way to go. Get rid of a lot of scouts. A lot of scouts have been fired over the years. Good scouts, loyal scouts. Now you got guys sitting at the keyboard trying to type up stats, see guys on video. It's a cheaper method, cheaper alternative, but it's also created a lack of instruction. Major League, you watch the Major League game nowadays, you watch a lot of baseball like I do, a lot of guys don't know how to play the game. It's incredible. I mean, it's like a malady across Major League Baseball.
I was thinking about biggest surprises along with the same question that we had about the method. So here are the Dodgers picking up all that salary and having a whole team of superstars, and they really had a great season. We know that they didn't end up getting to the series. We know all about that, but there's no talking down how good they were and what Mattingly did, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, in the American League East, you had the Blue Jays. They did the same thing. They picked up all the salary, they picked up all the stars, and yet they finished last. Why the Dodgers and why not the Blue Jays?
Well, the big difference was the pitching, obviously. You got Clayton Kershaw, arguably the best pitcher in baseball on the Dodgers.
The Blue Jays picked up the Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah, but come on. I mean, Ari, that was a career year with the Mets. I told people when he left the Mets that he was never going to duplicate what he did the year before, and the Mets made a smart trade there. It hasn't paid off yet, but I think it will because I like Syndergaard and I like Darno. He hasn't shown it yet, but at least they picked up some young guys when they traded Dickey. The Blue Jays were a mess. They didn't really have a mesh there. They've done things like the Angels did, the Yankees in the '80s. Let's throw a bunch of stars together. Let's see if it sticks against the wall. But it didn't work. It worked for the Dodgers to some extent because of the pitching and the injection of Puig into the lineup. He gave them an energy spark because they were going nowhere as of June. They were 18-30 in their first 48 games, then went off in this 42-8 stretch that put them right in the division lead.
I'm going to throw out a couple of names. First of all, why didn't Josh Hamilton do well with the Angels? I mean, really, he was as good a player in Major League Baseball for a period of time. We know there was baggage, but he had a terrible year with Los Angeles.
Well, there were a number of people who believed he couldn't function in a big city. That he may have been distracted by what goes on. Even though it's not New York, it's still a pretty big market, Anaheim out there in California, more so than Texas. Maybe he just got overwhelmed with all the attention and the big contract. That happens sometimes in the first year. Yeah. Maybe next year he picks it up. But he didn't look like the player that they paid him for.
Which, of course, is the beauty of the game when you say maybe next year he'll pick up because you never really
That's what we have right now.
And one thing, and then we're going to bring on Russ Cohn, and we're going to talk about this book, Baseball's Best Rookies. But Don Mattingly, you know Mattingly. You've been around the Yankees for a long time, and certainly around Yankee Stadium. I believe, just on face value, he deserves a chance to come back next year, and I think in all indications there are. How good a manager do you believe he is? Is he really? My sense is he's not the kind of real firm, strong manager that you'd like to see. On the other hand, he won the division this year.
Well, it depends on your definition of a good manager. What is a good manager? The guy gives you the edge in the dugout during the game, or the guy that gets the most out of his roster?
Well, give me both.
Yeah, but a lot of guys don't have those abilities. I think Mattingly got a lot out of the roster. I mean, he had Puig making, youthful, you want to call them youthful mistakes throughout, the whole season. And then he had to calm him down because of his antics on the field at times. That was a tough job, keeping him reined in. He took a lot of abuse for some of the moves he made in the postseason. One of them, I can't believe that people are second-guessing him when he pinch ran for Gonzalez in the 8th inning. It wasn't the 6th inning. It was the 8th inning. Yeah, if I know the game's going to go 13 innings, I may not pinch run for him.
Last question before we go bring in Russ Cohn. Why don't they like Mattingly in Los Angeles?
I don't know. Maybe it's a Yankee thing. I really don't know. I mean, I've never seen this kind of reaction to a guy who's won there.
Well, we had it with Willie Randolph here in New York, and I know you're well aware of the undercurrent of things that were said about Randolph. Same kind of thing, I feel like.
Could be, but we're only over here. We're only hearing stuff of what goes on there.
Howie's the official scorer in the New York stadiums, not in the Los Angeles stadiums. Anyway, let's bring on Russ Cohn. Here's the book. The book is Baseball's Best Rookies. Not a big book, but kind of a fun book. So, Russ, how are you? Thanks for joining us on Bronx Talk.
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. Tell me, and as I understood it from Howie, this really was your project to start.
Yeah, it just was one of those things. I've written a few other books, and I wanted to do another baseball book, and I always enjoy watching rookies come on and play and tear up the league, and I thought it would be fun to sort of highlight some of them. And so I said, I called Howie because I know he's a good baseball guy, and we chatted about it, but and he liked the idea, and then it just sort of evolved. We didn't have a real good blueprint at the beginning. We just decided we'd come up with some ideas of how we'd like to tackle it, what era is, because obviously there's a lot of rookies of the year, and I think we put together something pretty good.
Yeah, it's certainly a fun read. I mean, there's no question about that. Did you learn anything about rookies, like in doing the research? Like you say, gee whiz, I didn't realize something.
I did. Interviewing Fred Claire, I learned a lot. I mean,
the Dodgers
had 16 rookies of the year, and he was there for all of them in some way, shape, or form. And just learning about the scouting and the player development, I do a lot of that with hockey, and to hear it with baseball, I knew it was always important, but Fred wouldn't take he wouldn't take any credit for any of it. He gave it all to his scouts, and I mean, they had 5 in a row, which is pretty unheard of. And at that time, Sandy Alderson called him and congratulated him because even he couldn't believe it. And that was when he was with the A's. So I think I took that away and said, that is a tremendous accomplishment, and it does sort of explain how the Dodgers had all that success over the years.
Although, of course, they didn't achieve ultimate success. I'm going to ask Howie this question first, and then we'll go to you, Russ. What about the predictability of a Rookie of the Year to ultimately be a star? In a moment, we're going to put up the top 20 rookies that you guys put together in the book. But, and in that list is someone like Tom Seaver, who's, of course, one of the all-time greats, or, Jackie Robinson, or, Mike Piazza. But how do you tell if Mike Trout, let's say, is going to be a great player, or someone like Bob Grimm, who didn't turn out to be a great player? Is there predictability, or it's like anything else, you just roll the dice?
I think there's some, and then on the other side, there is not. I think when you watch enough baseball and you know about the movements and things that dictate why a guy will be good, I think when you see things from a certain player, that's why you pick up guys that they're not highly scouted in the beginning, they're not heralded as much. I think certain guys see things in a guy. When Mattingly came up, he wasn't known that, he wasn't really projected to be the heck of a player he became. Certainly, they didn't predict his power numbers, but somebody saw that he had bat speed. If he could transfer his weight better, try to pull the ball, which he did, and could still hit the opposite field, that developed. He was a late-round pick. Mike Piazza, a lot of people didn't believe in right off the bat, right away.
A lot of people didn't believe in Mike Piazza at the end of his career.
Exactly, but I think it varies. I mean, certain guys see things in a player, and some people just look at the numbers and don't really look at the player. It is unpredictable to an extent, but you can zero in on certain guys.
Russ, you want to answer the same question about the predictability of it?
I think what Howie said made a lot of sense, and I also do think it's how a guy's handled. I mean, Mark Friedrich, you could sort of make the argument he wasn't handled very well. He threw too many games. He ultimately killed his arm, and that really did kill his career, where a guy like Seaver definitely had a certain pedigree, and you almost didn't need a pitching coach with him. He sort of knew what to do. Even a modern-day Derek Jeter, how much instruction has Derek Jeter really gotten over the years? It's not like he was a superstar when he first came up, but you saw there was a little something special in this guy, and so some of them have that, and then some of them do surprise you, like Piazza. And Mike Trout just came out of the gate. Like, I'm in the South Jersey area, and we heard about him for years, and he just looks like a ball player. He does everything well. And you rarely ever see this guy make a mistake in a game. And so when you see that out of the gate, you sort of think he's headed for a Hall of Fame.
I'm going to throw something out here, and I'm not the only one who ever saw that or thought of it. With Mike Trout, he's the first player that I've seen in my lifetime that reminds me of Mickey Mantle. I mean, he just has got all the skills that Mantle had. He can run, he can hit, he can, obviously hit with power and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, with all due respect, he's not Mickey Mantle. I know he's a heck of a player, but I mean, you're really stretching there a little bit. The guy's had a great 2 years.
Well, obviously time will tell. And let's put up the list of 20 best rookies. That is on page, whatever it is, page 69 of the book, Baseball's Best Rookies. Folks, so let's put that list up there. I thought it was interesting that Jackie Robinson, do we have that list? I thought we had, there it is. I thought it was interesting that Jackie Robinson was there. Russ, is that because of the obvious reason that Jackie did something that not only no rookie ever did, but no player ever did?
Yeah, that's a part of it. I mean, Howie and I weren't the only ones that voted. There was another vote or two just to sort of get an outside opinion. But he also did put up really tremendous numbers under really hard circumstances. And when you take all of that into account, he had the hardest time of any rookie. That's clear.
Mm-hmm. Let's put that list up there again. There are so many names to pick out, and this will really be the last thing, and then we'll let Russ go, and we'll talk with Howie about some scoring decisions and things like that. There are modern players. It's very difficult in a way for me to measure a Craig Kimbrell to see, is he really deserving of a top 20 of all time? But I guess that with a closer, it becomes a numbers thing, right?
Well, when we put the list together, part of it was the season they had, the impact they had, and trying to branch out from just the one season. I mean, you look at Ichiro's first season, a lot of people don't even consider him a rookie because he played in the Japan leagues, but, he's still a rook over here, and he put up an incredible year. He won the MVP. So when Russ put the list together, that was his idea also. I voted on it, and we both decided Jackie was number one, and then we went from there, and thought we came up with a pretty, reliable list.
Russ, thanks so much for joining us. The book is Baseball's Best Rookies, a fun book to read. Pick it up. You can buy it anywhere, right? Amazon, BN,
Yep,
or
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those places. And thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Okay, and you had Jane was telling me about something else, Sportsology. Is that what that is?
Yes, www.sportsology.net. That's my website.
All right, there we go. .net. They're going to make sure that's clear. Russ, thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks, Russ.
Howie Carpin, one of the things which I always like, and when we had the morning show, we used to talk about it, is just talking about some of the things that go on as an official scorer. Now, there are appeals that happen after you make a call. Players, I guess, are allowed to appeal. Tell me about some of the appeals that you've had even last season.
Let me give you a quick history. There used to be an appeal process where if they wanted to appeal a call, a scoring call, they would have to go through the team, and the team PR would set it up and send it to the league. But since they signed the new CBA, 2 years ago, they put in the CBA that the players now don't have to go through the team. They can go through either themselves or their representatives.
So they could contact you directly?
Well, they contact the league, and then the league contacts me if it's my call. And I had 4 of those this year, and all 4 were upheld, so I was 4 for 4.
So you won.
But that's the process now. Now we see the emails. Like, we never saw the emails
So now
before.
you hear what they say.
Now you see the actual, now they put the actual case in print, and then we get to be like Perry Mason and give our defense because we send it back in.
Give me a little, literally, inside baseball. You can name names or not name names. Tell me, give me an example of an appeal that you won this year.
Well, I had one where I think it was Louis Cruz was on the Yankees. He went in the hole for a ball, and the kid on Royals, Alcides Escobar, he booted the ball in the hole, and Escobar reached, and I called it an error because he only took a step to get to the ball. In Major Leagues, you got to backhand it and play it.
Right.
It's not like you have to go 5 steps to get to it.
Right.
So I called it an error. His representative wanted it to be a hit.
Of course.
And they upheld the call. That was one. Then toward the end of the year, there was one at each place, Citi Field and Yankee Stadium. I won't tell you the names, but one Yankee wanted his teammate to get an error instead of him. Believe it, that's what they appeal.
Wow.
They send in.
So one of the players told you he wanted to give the error to the teammate instead of to me.
Right.
Ooh.
And then there was another one. And
You're a gentleman for not mentioning
the
that.
Mets, the same thing, kind of. But it was like it wasn't 2 fielders. It was a a pitcher and a player.
Let's talk about the Yankees and Mets. So now the Yankees are in a situation they haven't been in for a long time. The stars, Pettit and Posada and Mariano, and of course Jeter on the downside of his career. Where are they at, and what do they need to do?
Well, I've told people this the last few years. I don't like the way the team is being run. They seem to be going back to what they did or at least away from the field. They seem to be more involved with what's going on in the stadium. Let's bring in a football game. I know they got 2 hockey games, which would be nice, but they seem to be taking away from what's going on the field. Now, I'm hearing that they signed Ichiro, not so much to play right field and be productive for them, but maybe to take advantage of what he hit, that 4,000 hit milestone combined with the major leagues and the Japanese leagues.
Which really wasn't that big. I mean, it's a nice
thing.
But
it was in Japan, and they tried to at least exploit.
You're saying it was more a marketing thing than a baseball
marketing,
thing.
and that's the direction they seem to be headed. They've made some very...
So give me the first thing. My question is, what are you going to do for a closer? I mean, they talk about all these other positions. That's a really big thing for the Yankees at this point.
Yeah, the problem is it's not just closer. They need a catcher. They need another outfielder. They have no power in the outfield except for Soriano, and he's inconsistent.
Will the fans accept a rebuilding year, or to say, much like the Mets have acknowledged, we're just not going to be that good for a while? Or do they go out and keep spending money? Is the $189 million a real ceiling?
It could be, but I think the attendance starts to drop off when they start to be less successful. I mean, they've been fortunate the past 17 years. Look at that foursome that stayed together all that time.
So if they miss, my Yankee fans hate hearing this, but if they miss a year or they're in this kind of rebuilding but do the right things, tolerate it for a year. I mean, is that possible at Yankee Stadium?
They would if there was hope in the future. Right now, you got to look down the road, and it doesn't seem to be that bright.
Let's talk about the Mets now. The Mets have the young pitching. Of course, Harvey will not be back next year. What do you do at first base? I mean, are you really looking at Ike Davis again?
I hope not. I think they have to be creative, and that means not so much the free agent market, but maybe going in a trade of value for value. In other words, I'm thinking of maybe Colorado's looking to unload Tulowitzki. Michael Kadire could be available.
You put a Dylan G in a deal like that?
Maybe put a package together. Maybe you trade Ike Davis to Denver. Maybe they think they can get something out of him. If I'm the Mets, I don't wait on Ike Davis another year. I mean, I think he's worn out his welcome here, and I think you have to make a move while he's still young.
Howie, a good friend of both of ours, Jay from Riverdale, is on the phone. So now Jay called, it was like last week or something, and then he hung up before we got to him. So I hope he's going to stay with us now. Jay, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, Gav?
Did you call just to annoy us, or did you call to ask us a baseball question?
No, I called to congratulate you on your 901st show, and Howie on your great book. I read it. Howie gave me a copy yesterday.
There you go.
Yeah, as we were playing baseball yesterday morning, Howie and I were out there in the cold. Gary, you got to join us on Sunday.
Jay, we do really appreciate you calling in and watching the show and reading the book and being a good friend. So all the best to you, and say hello to Barbara and everyone.
Always a pleasure. Send my love to everybody. Love you guys.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, thanks. That was nice. Listen, and that's the other thing. I mean, he mentioned my 900th show, but you've been an official scorer for a long time in Major League Baseball.
15 years and 846 games.
The game, we were talking about it beforehand. Folks, I hope you can see the passion that we both have for the game of baseball. Howie and I, we could talk about it when the show's over. Believe me, we're going to keep going. The game has changed in those 15 years, and you were talking about the use of sabermetrics. Talk about what that is and how that's changed the game for the better, for the worse, or where it's headed as regards those numbers.
Well, it's a new formula that people have come up with to break down the sport. There seems to become some kind of statistical analysis that has developed with sabermetrics, and it's gotten a lot of attention the last few years because there's been a slew of young GMs that have come in to take over the teams, and they're using sabermetrics to build their ball clubs, except that some are not falling slave to it. Some are still using the old way, the old school way of good old-fashioned scouting. That's how the Dodgers got Puig. If you read it in Sports Illustrated, they went out there and looked at him. They didn't look at any sabermetrics. They looked at him, they thought he could play, and they signed him. But sabermetrics seems to be very invasive now in Major League Baseball.
Because everybody thinks they have a new way of doing something that hasn't been done.
See, people don't realize about baseball. Baseball's a game of imperfections. You can make the perfect pitch as a pitcher, and the guy could still get a piece of the bat on the ball and get a hit, even though you made the perfect pitch. it doesn't necessarily. You can't account for the inconsistencies of the sport or the foul ball down the line or something like that.
This is a concern of yours for the future.
It's concerning. It's concerning because people think this is the gospel now, and a lot of the teams are failing because of it. You know.
My biggest, we're almost out of time, which I hate already. Because
let me just make this point because you talked about the Red Sox. The Red Sox went against the metrics when they signed Shane Victorino. He's not a metrics player. He doesn't blow you away with the numbers, but he puts a lot of wins in the win column.
Didn't he have a grand slam and a triple?
Johnny Gomes is not a metrics player, but look what these guys did for them in the clutch.
Here's my problem with instant replay. You got a man on first. You got a ball that is trapped and called out in the outfield. And then they look at the replay and it's safe. Now you're placing the runner where he might be. If he was on second, would he have scored? You may have situations where umpires are going to be assigning runs and literally changing the score of the game based on that. That's my concern. You like the replay rule?
I like it, but it's going to have to be modified. I don't think the managers should have 3 challenges. I think they should have 2, and it should come at any time, not a certain parameter for when they can use them. I think the umpires won't be the only ones involved in making those decisions. There's going to be a central bureau where they're going to watch every game, just like hockey. Right. I think those people will also be involved in placing runners where they should be properly placed. Now, of course, that's going to cause some furor, but that you have to live with it. They want replay now. Everybody's crying for it. I just hope they never go to replay on balls and strikes because that would be a disaster.
Do you are you in favor of the way it looks right now?
I'm in favor of I'm not so much in favor of base calls like out at first and stuff because you're looking at it on a flat screen. But the other things like foul balls on the line, things like that, yes, I am in favor of that. I'm not in favor of the double play call, the neighborhood call, reviewing that. That could be a big problem.
That's going to be a big problem.
That's a big problem.
And we will credit the umpires. They reviewed a play in the World Series and got it right. And there were a number of calls. Of course, we know what happened at the end of a couple of games that were on umpire
right,
calls.
But that's not like that was blatant. The neighborhood play is going to come into question, and you have guys who are so used to just touching the bag with their toe or whatever.
Oh my goodness.
Now you get guys hurt staying on the bag.
Folks, the game is a great game. Leave it alone. Howie Carpin, always a pleasure. I wish we could have you here every week. The book is Baseball's Best Rookies. He also has Yankees Essential, which is still doing very well. And this one I love. If you're a Met fan, you're just going to love this. Imagine a Mets perfect season. Talks about 162 different games. Always a pleasure, Howie.
Oh, great to be with you.
Never enough time, although we're going to continue when you guys are gone, I assure you. Folks, but if you do have further comments or questions, you want to ask Howie a question, you can send it to me. Anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at BronxTalk@hotmail.com. Post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. Please become a fan of Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can see our archives of BronxNet.org, and you check out the Bronx Talk link on the bottom right navigation bar. Next week, we'll go back to what we usually do. We'll tackle the shop and frisk controversy and talk in depth about shoppers who are targeted because of their race. Then a week later, November 18th, Controller John Liu will be our guest in his final appearance while still in office as controller. We'll talk about the race for mayor, his term as controller, issues to be taken on by the next controller, and a range of Bronx issues, too. Thanks to producer Jane Folloro. Our director is Shirley Arrieta, the studio coordinator Dina Valentin. And we'll see you next week. Good night.